how can I get ahead financially and build a solid financial future for myself and my family? These are questions I've been asking for several years now. And I've read a lot of books about the subject. I've started doing my own investing. And overall, I think I've learned quite a lot. And in this video, I want to share what I've learned with you in hopes that it provides you with some value, maybe some new perspectives on money, on life, and just how to escape this sort of cage that a lot of us find ourselves in when it comes to personal finances. So the first thing I see with a lot of people is spending. Right now, this is going to be an obvious one, but the fact of the matter is most people just don't control their spending very well. Even if you have a pretty good salary, if you're not keeping track of what you're spending your money on, you're going to be just wasting it. And so it's very important to be deliberate with your spending. And I think one of the best places to start is to start tracking your expenditures. So this could be as simple as setting up a spreadsheet and, copying and pasting your credit card statement and your any sorts of transactions that you do throughout the month. And this will help you kind of visualize and see what you're spending your money on. The biggest problem, I think, is most people don't even know. And so by laying it out in front of you, you can kind of see, okay, look, I'm spending too much money on alcohol. I'm spending too much money on, eating out. I'm spending, $60 a month on all my subscriptions. So maybe I can cancel some of them that I don't actually really use. And so it really comes down to painting a picture, even if it's hard to do. It's the act of actually tracking your income in itself is very, very simple. But I think a lot of us find it difficult psychologically because it forces us to be accountable and to really kind of look ourselves in the mirror and say, look, this is where my money's going. And it can be very painful, but that's why it's effective. And it really allows you to analyze and evaluate so you can make the necessary changes going forward. See, a lot of us in society, we spend money on things that we think are going to improve our lives. The fancy car, the new clothes, all these things that we think will add value and will really make us happy. But in the end, they actually really don't. And I think part of it is how we're raised, how society has kind of instilled these values within us. In the North American culture where I live, and a lot of developed countries, we're very materialistic. And the truth of the matter is, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, material things may up front seem like they're going to make your life better. But at the end of the day, they don't. Sure, having, decent clothes is important. Sure, having a functional vehicle that will transport you from point A to point B and is fairly reliable is going to be something that will probably increase the value of your life. But you don't need all the bells and whistles. You don't need the fancy new shirt or dress every week. And so I think it just requires a mindset shift and the realization that, we should be more deliberate with where we spend our money. And as soon as you're able to make that shift, that's when you're able to start saving more. And saving money is, it can really be the start of building wealth and getting yourself into a fantastic financial position, clearing out all your debt. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you start to be more deliberate with your spending, things will start to kind of fall in place. And so I think that's the first step. It's to One, identify what you're spending your money on. And two, ask yourself, are these things that I'm buying month in and month out actually truly making my life better, truly making me happy? Or are they just, impulse buys, things that really are materialistic and at the end of the day don't really add substantial, tangible value to your life? And saving is really key. So once you start saving, so what is saving? Well, saving is simply spending less than you make. Well, that's living below your means. But saving is just building up your funds, right? Building up your cash, building up your accounts. And saving alone isn't going to make or break your life. Saving is the start. And you see, there's another part of this. And that's a part that I think a lot of people neglect. And that is investing. Now, I think when a lot of people hear that word, investing or investments or anything of that sort, they start to visualize someone losing a lot of money. And they start to have this image in their mind that investing is risky. I could lose my money. I worked so hard for this. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to gamble it away. But you see, investing doesn't have to be that risky. It doesn't have to be gambling if you know how to do it. And of course, there are millions of things you can do to invest your money. There's crypto, there's stocks, there's bonds, derivatives, options, real estate, buying businesses. There's just so many different options out there, especially today. It can be very overwhelming. But if you really break it down and start out simply, right? Nothing fancy. We're not starting with crypto. Just the bare bones. I think it's good to start with a nice stock portfolio. I think that's the easiest way. Even if you're young, even if you're a student and you don't necessarily have the money for buying that first property, you can start buying stocks, and not just individual stocks, not just any stock. I'm talking about index funds or ETFs. And so, first of all, I want to address where this notion of stocks and investing being risky comes from. So a lot of us, growing up, our parents, assuming that our parents are not wealthy and don't have much experience investing, we're often kind of fed this narrative that, okay, look, if I invest, the company could just drop in value and I could just lose a lot of my money. I could lose my money that I worked so hard for if I put it in the stock market. But you see, that's a very limiting kind of perspective. And the reason it's limiting is because you're not diversifying, right? And diversification is very, very important. Now, it's not critical. You can buy a stock or a few stocks and, they go up in value over time. Or maybe you get really lucky and the company just blows up. Like if you had bought, say, NVIDIA shares a couple of years ago, they would have absolutely shot up. But again, if you invest your money into one stock, into one company, that I would consider to be risky because you put all your eggs in one basket, right? And if that company comes out with some bad news or whatever, maybe they were involved in some sort of fraud, maybe they all of a sudden you find out that their earnings weren't as good as the market had expected. Sorry, you don't find out, but the market finds out. And then the value plummets very quickly and you lose a lot of money. See, I think that's where the notion of risky comes in. Because everybody knows someone or someone who knows someone that lost money on a stock. Maybe they put a substantial amount into a stock. Maybe it was, $30,000 and that company went bankrupt. Companies like Nortel, There are lots of other ones out there, even big companies that you would never expect to go bankrupt. You expect them to just do really well and perform well for you, but they didn't. So everyone knows these stories of people who lost money in the stock market, people who got burned because they bought one or two stocks and they just dropped. They dropped like a stone and bam, money lost. And so that's where I mention index funds, right? So index funds basically, or ETFs in a nutshell, what it is it's a basket of stocks that trades on the stock market. So let me give you an example. So VFE is a Canadian index fund. So it trades on the TSX, trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange, but it holds. So basically it tracks the S&P 500 index. So the top 500 companies in the United States are all packaged basically into this one index fund. And so by purchasing this one package, right, it's just like buying a stock. You type in the ticker symbol in your brokerage, and you just click buy, and you would buy the index fund. But it's not buying one company. You're buying essentially the top 500 biggest companies in America. And that is what the S&P 500 is. It's the market that is the index that tracks the top 500 biggest companies. And so by purchasing one ETF, one share, you have put your money into essentially 500 of the biggest US companies. And so now you have that diversification, but you didn't have to go out and research all these different companies and find out, okay, look, which company do I think is undervalued? Which one do I think is going to go up over the next couple of years? You simply just threw your cash into one package that tracked this whole market index. Sorry, it was indexed to this index to the S&P 500. And so that's why I think that starting out with purchasing index funds, right, is probably the easiest and most effective way to really get into investing, even if you don't have a lot of money, right? So, you can buy some of these index funds for very cheap, $30 to $100. You can buy a share of this index fund. Now, personally, I recommend not just buying the S&P, but diversifying a little more than that. And so what you can do is you can buy, say, a Canadian index fund. You can buy also an American index fund, and you can also purchase an international index fund. There are different strategies for this. You could also, depending on what you believe, maybe you think America is, super strong and they'll continue to be strong in the future, and they're just going to keep doing really well. You could purchase 100% S&P 500. You could purchase an all U.S. market index fund, which basically just tracks the entire U.S. market, which includes even the small cap companies, the medium caps, as well as those top companies. Or maybe you just want to be really diversified, so you buy let's say 40% America, 20% Canadian, and 40% international. There are so many different allocation percentages you can choose. Personally, I'm a little heavier on the States because I do believe that they're going to be doing well in the future. But I also do diversify my portfolio out into Canada and other countries as well. But looking at ETFs and just seeing the value in, putting your money into this instrument that is tracking the markets. So I'm not trying to beat the market with picking certain stocks. I'm virtually buying the entire stock market. And over the years, the stock market has returned on average about 10%, right? And so what this means is that if you buy these index funds over time, you should be averaging about 10% per year. Now, it could be a little less than that depending on your allocation percentages. It could be a little more than that potentially, depending on what the market does in the future. Just because the stock market has averaged 10% in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to do that going forward. But chances are it'll be, pretty close unless something crazy happens in the economy. If the economy crashes, then index funds will be worth, probably a lot less anyway. So not only index funds, but just money in general and shares in general. So basically the point here is if you buy the market and you hold it, you should get these nice average annual returns. There will be some years when you're down. There will be some years when you're up. But on average, you're going to see those ups, you're going to see those downs, but on average, it's going to go up like this, right? And that's how it has been going up historically, over the past several decades. So I think that's the best way to start out. And, when I say best, I'm referring to kind of the average person, the average North American. This is how I've started. I also hope to get into real estate investing as well. I'm not at that point yet, but just starting out with some simple things like buying index funds. And another note with the index funds, and I'll probably make a video, another video about this that's a little more accurate. I'm just kind of throwing things out there now, but dollar cost averaging is some terminology that you should be aware of. So what does this mean? Dollar cost averaging. So also called DCA, which is the abbreviation. What this means is that you are going to be feeding money into the markets. So you're going to be buying these index funds on a regular basis. And this regular basis could be at your chosen intervals. It could be monthly. So every single month you're purchasing these index funds according to your allocation. Or it could mean maybe once a year you're buying them, but you just choose a set interval. I personally like to do monthly. You could also do quarterly. Again, you could do yearly. But the key here is that you're going to keep shoving cash into these equities, into these index funds over time. And it doesn't even matter where the stock market is, right? So every single month, I'm just throwing cash into these investments. It doesn't matter if, the stock market is up 20% or 5% or down 30%. It doesn't matter, okay? I don't care. Because over time, if you're putting money in consistently at regular intervals, you're going to be catching basically the average of the market, right? So sometimes you're going to buy on the highs and sometimes you're going to buy on the lows. And so when you're buying on the highs, obviously that's not ideal, but then other times you're going to be buying on the lows. And essentially then you're buying these shares at a discounted price. And so I'm not really explaining this super well, but over time, it'll just create kind of this smoothing effect where you'll get the average of the market. So instead of getting, trying to time the market and buying at all these different dips and valleys, trying to buy the lows, you're just simply buying consistently and just smoothing it out. So you're getting that average 10% return over time. And so one of the great things about dollar cost averaging is it eliminates the emotion from investing. See, one of the biggest problems people have when they're saving money and when they're investing, it's the problem is this. It's the mind, right? So when people start investing, they look at the market and they say, "Oh no, the stock market's down this month, so I should sell because what if it keeps going down and what if I lose all my money?" But again, if you're investing on a long-term horizon, so say, you're going to just keep your money in the stock market, you're not going to sell, then on average, you should be getting those 10% returns. If you plan on using your cash within a year or two, or, anything less than 5 years, ideally, it probably shouldn't be investing in the stock market because you're going to get that volatility. You could potentially lose money in the short term if you're selling at those lows. And so if you're investing in these index funds, if you're investing in equities, you're going to want to be holding for the long term, and just eliminating the emotion, right? So don't be scared if the market's down. Don't be super happy if the market's up. Just be cool, be level-headed, be like, okay, be indifferent. I don't care. I don't care what the market's doing. It could be up, it could be down, it could be sideways, it could be whatever. I'm going to keep shoving money in every month. It doesn't matter. Whatever happens, I'm still putting that cash in no matter what, right? And I'm not going to sell. I'm just going to keep piling it in over time. And see, that's where most people go wrong with investing is they start panicking, they sell their stock, or maybe they think, oh man, it's gone up so much. I should just, I should sell. And then they try to time the market and buy when it's low, but then they end up buying when it's high. And then they get scared and they sell, and they hear bad news about the economy, and then they sell because they're worried they're going to lose the value of their portfolio. But this is all short-term thinking, right? Again, if you look at the market average, it's returned 10% approximately. It could be maybe a little less. I don't have the exact data, but I know it's around 10%. So having that long-term mindset is key. And I think that's where, as humans, we are we automatically default to the short-term mindset. We want it now. We want to feel good now. If you look back to our early days as hunters and gatherers, we were just worried where our next meal would come from because we didn't know how to farm. We didn't know how to can food. We didn't know how to stockpile food. And so it was always, okay, guys, let's go out and we just got to find our next meal, right? And after you've eaten that meal, okay, now we got to go out again and we got to find the next meal. So it was always this short-term, in the moment kind of thinking, which, it's good to be present. It's good to be in the moment. But when it comes to finances, if you really want to get ahead, you got to have a long-term vision and you got to stick with it, right? If you're constantly selling and looking at the markets and being afraid and buying and selling and and just not being consistent with it, not sticking with it, and just, being all willy-nilly, you are probably not going to be super successful in the long term. And so people who are willing to stay the course of time, to keep that money locked in, even when the market seems to be going sideways, these are the people that are going to ultimately be the millionaires. The average, and I say average because I mean a millionaire that's not like some billionaire like Elon Musk, just like the typical millionaire. That's how the typical millionaire is made. Buy and hold, right? Obviously, there's business owners, but buying and holding investments, buying and holding assets for a long period of time so that they have that time to rise in value significantly and to compound over the years is really important, which brings me to my next point, compounding. So compounding, what does that mean? Well, when it comes to investing, at first, when you're just starting out, when you've got your portfolio, it's probably, it's going to be growing very slowly at the start because you don't have much money in there. Let's say you have $100 in your portfolio, right? Well, a 10% return on $100 is $10, right? So it's not that much. But let's say you had $100,000 in your portfolio. A 10% return on $100,000 is 10 grand. So basically, the further along you are in your investing journey, the faster your wealth is going to grow, right? So your wealth isn't going to grow. Let me focus. The wealth isn't going to grow linearly like this in a straight line. Generally speaking, it's going to grow like this, exponentially, like a hockey stick. I'm Canadian, so got to use a hockey reference. But the point being is that the earlier you can start investing, the better. The longer the time frame you have, the better. Because over time, that portfolio will really start to pick up steam. And the more it picks up steam, the bigger it grows, the faster it grows. And it's just this huge snowball effect that will just completely transform your portfolio and will, ultimately take you over that $1 million mark. This might take 30 years, depending on how much you're investing. It might take 30, 40 years if you're investing, say, $500 a month. But if you're able to invest more aggressively and, really, so I like to think of it like pushing a snowball or starting a snowball for a snowman. So when you first start out, you're rolling it, right? And that ball it takes a while to get it going, right? And it's really challenging when you first start. But then once it's getting bigger, it's picking up more and more snow with each roll. So yes, it's heavier, but ultimately that ball is picking up more snow because it's got more surface area and it's growing faster and faster and faster. So for example, to double the snowball size when it was small, let's say it might have taken you 20 rolls. But now when it's big, to double the size, it only takes you 5 rolls. So that's what I think of when I think of compounding and investments is, it takes a while to start and, it's a slow start. But as you go further along in time and in piling wealth into your portfolio, you will start to see those investments really pick up speed and really grow fast. And I think, once you get over that $100,000 mark and you start to really see that portfolio going up, thousands of dollars a year, it'll really kind of boost you and inspire you to continue down this path and keep pouring cash into your investments on a consistent basis. So that's kind of the gist of, my perspective at this point when it comes to stock market investing. Obviously, it helps if you have a nice sum to start out with. Maybe, you've been saving for a while and you just didn't know how to invest, but now hopefully I've given you some ideas when it comes to index funds, and you can do a bit more of your own research and figure out which ones and which portfolio allocation maybe seems best for you. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do it per se, but I think the key is just to start investing as early as you can. Ideally, in your late teens, early 20s. You may be watching this. Obviously, it could be any age, but the sooner you start investing, the better. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now, right? So just get out there, start investing, open up your brokerage account. It could be, there are so many different brokerage websites. I'm Canadian, so, I typically would like to go for something like Wealthsimple or Questrade. If you're in America, there's all these different brokerages. I know Webull is one of them. A lot of the banks have them. And just get on there, create an account, open up an account, start putting some money in, even if you don't have a lot of money. It could be $200 a month to start, $100, anything, right? Just start buying those index funds and just let your wealth kind of build up over time. And, 10 years from now, if you keep at it, you'll be amazed at how far you've come. You might not have, reached your goals of financial freedom, but at least you'll be on the path and you'll see that it really is possible. And so why are people broke? Well, spending too much, not being deliberate with your spending. So how do you fix that? Well, you start tracking your money. Where is your money going? Where are your paychecks going? And once you've identified areas that are, bogus, that you don't need to spend money on, well, then you shift your focus. Maybe you can cut back on your spending, or maybe you can divert it into investments instead and start saving and investing and growing your wealth. And also investing in index funds, taking a simplified approach and diversifying, dollar cost averaging over time, and just really starting to kind of build this momentum with your personal finances. Pay off all your debts. If you've got, interest rates, 6, 7, even higher, 20%. If you've got a credit card debt, you want to pay that down and then, get yourself going on that investment journey. I know there's a lot of stuff that I missed here that I would want to say, but it's, it's getting late, so I think I'm going to call it a night. And I know that this was very ranty and incoherent, but I just wanted to get this out there for some people. And hopefully, if you're thinking about growing wealth and you're tired of just being on this treadmill, the corporate life, or just working every day and feeling like you're not getting ahead, hopefully this video gave you a little bit of hope, and you'll start taking some action and start looking at your situation in a new with a new lens, and start getting yourself into that situation where you're putting money aside for investing, and you're buying those funds, and you're just stacking the dollar bills. Anyway, my name's Lucas. If you found this video helpful, if you are looking for financial freedom, and that's something that you really want to achieve, then highly recommend subscribing. And hit me up with any questions, comments. Always looking to hear other people's perspectives out there. And share this video if you can. If you find that it was helpful, and maybe it'd be helpful to someone that you know, then that would be fantastic. Anyway, I'm gonna let you go, and cheers.